and I just have to, I can't stay around. I have to leave. And for an hour and a half, I watched as every man, I don't know if it's every man, most of the men spent the workshop time reassuring this woman, pleading with her not to leave. And again, I saw this phenomenon of a woman being very powerful. The whole workshop, hour and a half, paid time, everybody abandoned what they were there to learn in order to plead with this woman to stay. Very powerful, and yet feeling none of that power, feeling abused, in fact, feeling like a victim. I watched that, and I wondered at it. At one point I spoke up. I said, I'm the guy she's talking about. No abuse of any kind took place. Nobody was interested in exploring that. A woman was hurting, and the men wanted to fix it. This is an example of the gendered behavior, what feels right, that I started talking about. What feels right, what felt right for those men was to address that woman's pain, try to make it right for her. And so, this is how I came to understand what is going on between the genders. It happened that night, after that amazing workshop session, which, I forgot to mention, the woman did stay. So after an hour and a half, she relented. She said, okay, I'll stay. And that night, I had a model come to me, and I'll show you what it is. I'm sorry that our computer technology didn't work. We're using this clunker here. Real clicker. I won't get anything. This does have two lamps. Switch it this way. Now it's done. No. Sorry, this focus on this isn't very good either. Can you read it? Yeah. Okay. So I need to talk a little bit about codependence. I was talking about how we are compelled by the sense of what feels right to us to do. And one of the ways that, I guess the psychological theory that talks about compulsions is the theory of addiction. And codependence is an addictive model. And what I suggested, or what came to me that night, and I have spent the last 16 or 18 years since then checking out to make sure that it's true in society. And as far as I can tell, it works every time, is this model. So what we have is, in codependence, this explains what feels right for us to do. So I'm not saying that this exists somewhere inside us. I don't know that. What I'm saying is it explains how we do what we do, how the gendered processes manifest. So if you look at men's power, we'll start there because that one's familiar to us. And it's quite real. In codependence, what you do is you transact in relationships with men and women. You transact in order to get your needs met. And so men's area of authority has been physical, economic, and political. And this is familiar to us because this is what feminism has raised to us, and it's quite real. So what can you do with the physical power? You can reward, you can protect, or you can attack. You can, with the economic power, you can provide or abandon. With the political, you represent or oppress. Now this happens in micro situations, in intimate relationships, and in the wider society. This is what feels right to us to do until we work our way past it. I think it comes from a long, long way back in our history. And so what we see here is that the right-hand top box, the attack, abandon, and oppress, is what the whole of the women's movement is about. Those are real issues. I'm not denying them. They're real issues. But they're a quarter of the whole of the picture. Now, what about women's power? The big thing about women's power is that it's covert in this model. And that's why it isn't experienced as power. Women have moral power, emotional, and sexual. And what I'm suggesting is that these powers balance. Men's and women's powers balance. And that these powers are largely unconscious. They express themselves through us, through what feels right for us to do in the moment. So the moral power can be used to honor or to shame. The emotional power to nurture or abuse, the sexual power to favor or to reject. And the moral power is the biggest one. That's equivalent to the male's physical power. And that's the one that I mentioned that men are so vulnerable to. Women are very afraid of violence, and men are very, I can't say afraid because it's not a conscious thing, but are very, very vulnerable to shame. And so this is how, as I understand it, this is how feminism has been able to control the discourse around gender, to focus on women's issues, which are real issues, but to deny the validity, for the most part, of men's issues, because they have the moral power to say, this is what should be paid attention to, this is what's right, and this is what's wrong. This is what's good, and this is what's bad. It's men's issues, attack, abandon, oppress, that should be paid attention to, and women's shame, abuse, reject, should not. It's being done sincerely. It's not a conspiracy. It's not an intention to mislead. It's sincerely felt. But it's not healthy. And so my book is about how does this work in lots of detail. I give lots more stories. I give lots more examples. And I look in detail at the movements, the men's movement, the women's movement, what they've done, how they've done it, under this understanding of a balance of power, where men have the overt power and women have a covert power. Men and women are in denial of women's power. Men and women are in denial of men's powerlessness. So what do we need to do? Well, one at a time, each of us. We need to look at this and recognize that our feelings about what's true, if it feels wrong to us, that feeling might itself be mistaken. That feeling might itself be coming from way back, be part of our gender programming. How do we find out if that's true? We think about it. Feeling is balanced by thinking. And thinking can take us to a new place. Feeling can. It feels to us like if we were wrong, we would notice. But that feeling is mistaken. Because feeling is about recognizing. It can only confirm what we already believe. If something that comes along that disagrees with what we already believe, it will feel wrong. But thinking is different. If we think carefully about it, we can go to a new place. We can examine this kind of thing. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there. And let's take questions. Let's have a conversation. Yes.
So,